The G82 M4 is one of BMW's best performing vehicles in every way. Until you try to crank up the radio. But today, that problem gets fixed as we completely transform this G82 sound system with our Alpha 1 amp and signature speakers. Welcome back, Dylan here. If you've been keeping up with the channel, you saw that we recently released our Alpha 1 Signature Edition speakers. Of course, we're still going to continue to offer our Alpha 1 original speakers, which sound great, but the Signature Edition speakers sound fantastic. And that is what's going in this G82 behind me, as well as one of our amps. Let's learn a little bit more about the gear that'll be going in it.
Let's start with the amp. This plug-and-play amp delivers 840 watts RMS and 1,680 watts max power, which is over 3 times the factory amp. It features 11 output channels, which includes one RCA line-level pre-out to drive an additional subwoofer amplifier. It can also hold up to 10 tuning files that can be changed to fit musical preferences. This power and tuning capability is exactly what the Signature Edition speakers need, which brings us to the next part. Each speaker in the Signature line has been redesigned and rebuilt from the ground up to deliver the cleanest sound possible at any volume. Everything from the textile domes in the tweeters, to ventilated voice coil gaps in the mids, increased power handling for the woofers, and even to the MKP capacitors used in the crossovers is to deliver one result: the last sound system you'll ever need for your BMW.
To take full advantage of the superiority that the Alpha 1 Signature Edition speakers offer, you will need to pair them with one of our Alpha 1 amps. So if you already have one of our amps in your G82 and plan on getting these speakers, we'll hook you up with a retune. However, if you're like this G82 owner who didn't have our amp and plan on getting both the amp and speakers together, well, out of the box, you'll get a system that's tuned just for your BMW, your ears, and the music that you listen to.
To learn about all the specs for this amp and the Signature speakers, check out the links in the description to see our site and more videos.
With all of that out of the way, let's get to the installation on this G82 M4. Without further ado, Jarrett, take it away.
Let's start with the amp. The first thing you need to do before dealing with anything electronic is to disconnect the battery. Since this car has frameless windows, open the doors or lower the windows to prevent the glass from being damaged when you open them. To disconnect the battery, start by opening the trunk, and with the aid of one of our trim tools, pop up the floor panel and remove it. With a 10mm socket, remove the negative battery terminal and set it aside. If you want, tie a towel around the trunk latch to prevent it from closing and locking you out. Remove the 4 fasteners holding this rear panel in place. After they're all out, lift up from the bottom and remove it. To remove the left side panel, start by lowering the seat. With the trim tool, carefully lift up the cover on this cargo tie-down. With a T40 bit, remove the bolt and remove the tie-down. Now remove all the fasteners holding it in place here, 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 and here. Finally, pull up from this bottom corner and remove the panel. Next, we can remove this tray. Remove the panel and anything else you might need to get to the 2 10mm nuts that you'll need to remove. After that, remove the tray. Now we can start disconnecting the factory equipment. Up at the RAM module, disconnect the lever lock connector by pushing in the center tab and pulling the lever up. For the round pink and white connectors, push in the center tab and pull. For the rectangular white connector, push down on the tab on the top and pull. On the factory booster, remove the lever lock connector. To remove the factory RAM module and bracket, loosen this 10mm nut here, here, and remove this one here to slide the bracket out. Now we need to mount the Alpha 1 amp and relocate the RAM module. Start by removing the 3 8mm nuts holding the RAM module to the factory bracket and removing it. Drop on the Alpha 1 amp with the attached bracket onto the factory bracket like so, and reinstall the factory 8mm nuts. Next, drop the RAM module onto the Alpha 1 RAM module relocation bracket and tighten it down with the 3 included 8mm nuts. For the last few steps to prepare for installation, insert the included plastic bolt socket into this open hole in the car's body here. Make sure it's pushed in as far as it'll go to seat it properly. Jarrett opted to undo this reusable cable tie to make tidying up the upcoming wiring a little easier. Now it's time to start putting everything in. Start by sliding the factory bracket with the Alpha 1 amp on it into place from where you removed it before. Finger tighten the lower nut, but before tightening everything down completely, slide the RAM module relocation bracket into place like so. The extended arm up top will go behind the top nut on the amp bracket, and you'll install the included 8mm bolt onto the location below. You can then tighten everything back down. Let's start plugging it in. Start with the power and ground. Jarrett opted to use a couple cable ties to keep the cables together for a few inches before installing them. You don't need to do this, but Jarrett likes to make everything look good. Plug the power and ground connector into the amp like so. Feed it under this factory harness to begin the run. For the positive, feed it under this hold-down bracket. Next, pop off this terminal cover. To allow room for the cable to fit under the cover, cut off this tab here. This is soft plastic as it's designed to be modified in this way. Remove this 13mm nut here. Jarrett popped this retainer out to make feeding the cable easier, but it's not needed. Slide the ring terminal on the Alpha 1 positive cable over the stud and tighten the nut back down. Snap the cover back on and snap the retainer back in place if you removed it. Jarrett used some Velcro to stick the fuse to the bottom of the tub here to keep it from moving around. If you have any slack, use a cable tie to tidy it up. For the ground, locate this grounding bus here and remove the 10mm nut. Slide the ring terminal on the Alpha 1 ground cable over the stud and tighten the nut back down. Use a cable tie to tidy up the slack. Now we can plug everything else in. Start by plugging the Alpha 1 harness into the amp. Everything only goes in one place, so there's no risk of making a mistake. Next, plug the factory booster lever lock connector into the corresponding connector on the Alpha 1 harness labeled Booster. And then plug the Alpha 1 harness into the factory booster. Jarrett used some cable ties to tidy everything up. To make sure the factory connectors can reach the relocated RAM module, very carefully cut this factory tape and remove it, separating the white and pink connectors for the RAM. Jarrett then loomed these two cables together and then added tape back over the factory harness to keep everything together. Plug all of the factory connectors back into the RAM module except for the lever lock connector. When that's complete, plug the factory RAM lever lock connector into the corresponding connector on the Alpha 1 harness. Then plug the Alpha 1 harness into the RAM module. Then you can, you guessed it, use cable ties to tidy everything up. Oh, and this time, the factory reusable one too. The final thing to plug in would be the USB cable, which is used to digitally access the amp should you ever need or want to. Jarrett plugged it in and then used a cable tie around the bracket to keep some strain off of it. Good thinking, Jarrett. Grab the tray you removed earlier and feed the USB cable through this hole here. Drop the tray into place. Replace the 10mm nuts. Coil up the slack on the USB cable and use something easier to remove like a twist tie to keep it tidy. Reassemble the rest of the tray. Before putting everything back together, Jarrett added the soft side of some Velcro to where the sharper edges of the metal meet the power cable. This will help cut down on the risk of damage. He then secured the cable down with some gaff tape. Now we can begin reassembly. Start by articulating in the side panel, and make sure the weather stripping is over it. Replace the tie down. Replace all of the fasteners. Drop back in the rear panel and make sure the weather stripping is over it. Push it down into place. Replace the 4 fasteners. At this point, the most sensitive electronic part is done, the amp. While we recommend leaving the battery disconnected during the speaker installation part as well, you will need to reconnect and disconnect the battery a few times to move the seats around. That being said, we will always suggest leaving it disconnected. Either way, if you reconnect it, use a 10mm socket, drop the floor panel back in, remove the towel, and it's time to move on to the speakers. Let's start with the center channel. Use a trim tool to carefully pop off the grill. After that, remove the 3 T20 screws holding the mid in place. Lift the mid out and disconnect it. Remove the 4 T20 screws holding the bracket down. Once they're all out, lift up from the corners to remove it. With a pick tool, carefully push back on the tabs holding the tweeter down while applying upward tension on the leads to, well, do that. Take the Alpha 1 signature tweeter and snap it into place. Due to the limited space, we need to modify the gorgeous crossovers. While the crossovers are very elegant, the process of removing the housing really isn't. Regardless, each one is designed to be used without the housing in the event you're limited on space, such as in this location. Behind these cutouts on either side are tabs that you will need to bend back to release the top half. Jared found it easier to bend back both halves at once since it's a very tight fit. Once you get it going, start bending back the other side and the cover will pop off. For the bottom half, carefully insert a pick tool between the circuit board and the sidewall of the housing. Work the pick tool under the board and pry it up. Just be careful to not insert the pick tool too deep under the board. You can attempt to push from the bottom through the holes of the housing, but you risk punching through the circuit board, so we don't recommend that. Once you get it free, it's time to protect it. Slide over the piece of heat shrink included with each crossover, and use a heat gun to secure it. Make sure you don't put the heat gun too close, and keep moving it to avoid damaging the crossover. Now back to the car. Plug the main feed from the amp into in on the crossover. Tuck the crossover under the dash as Jared is doing. Use a cable tie to tidy up the slack. Grab the bracket you put the signature tweeter in before, and plug the lead from the tweeter into TW out on the crossover. Feed the mid out through the opening in the bracket where the mid goes. Jarrett tidied up the remaining slack before putting the bracket back in. Push the bracket in place and replace the 4 T20 screws holding it down.
Plug the mid out from the crossover into an S40 mid, tidy up the slack, and drop the S40 mid into the bracket. Use the factory T20 screws to secure it in place. Finally, press the grill back into place and the center cluster is done. For the rest of this installation, we'll just be showing you on the passenger side, but it will be the same on the driver's side. With that out of the way, let's get to the doors. Start by using a trim tool to carefully remove this panel here. Remove the T25 screw. Next, use a trim tool to remove this small cover here, and remove the T25 screw behind it. Finally, remove this T25 screw as well. Now for panel removal. It's worth noting that if these have never been removed before, they will be very tight. With the biggest pry tool in our kit, slide it under the panel near the edges and pry while pulling on the panel. Eventually, it will, well, do that. Anyway, once you get it started, keep pulling until the left, bottom, and right sides are all free. Then lift up and away to free the top. To disconnect the panel, remove the handle cable, and then, and this is a big thank you to BMW for finally making this easy, the one connector down here. Set the panel down somewhere safe. Disconnect the factory speaker and remove the 3 T20 screws holding it in place. Remove the speaker. Put one of the S45 mids in its place, and reuse the factory screws to secure it. To prep the crossover for installation, remove the backing of one of the soft double-sided adhesives in the crossover kit, and stick it to the back of one of the crossovers. Once stuck on, remove the backing on the other side and stick it into place like so. If done right, the panel will not interfere with it. Bring all of the cables up and use a cable tie to group them together a few inches. Feed them under this factory harness and start plugging it in. The feed from the amp into in, the lead to the tweeter into TW out, and mid out right into the S45 mid. Finally, tidy up all the cables. For the tweeter, disconnect it here and slide the housing up and off. Once off, remove the foam backing. And like before, carefully use the pick tool to, well, once again do that. Snap in an Alpha 1 signature tweeter, feed the lead through the foam, and put the foam back in place. Back at the car, slide the housing down into place and plug in the tweeter. Tidy up any slack. To finish the reassembly, grab the panel and snap the door handle cable back in place. Reconnect the single connector. Again, thank you BMW. Slide the door pin through the hole and drop the panel in place from the top, and once the fasteners are lined up, persuade it back into place. Finally, replace all 3 screws. The 2 cover plates, and do the same on the driver's side. While we're already up here, let's move on to the underseat woofers. Reconnect your battery as needed to adjust your seat accordingly to be able to remove the 2 T50 bolts at the rear. Readjust your seat again to be able to remove the two up front as well. And carefully lean your seat back. We recommend prepping both seats up to this point and then disconnecting your battery again. With the grille exposed, remove the 4 T20 screws holding it down. Remove the grille. Pull back some of the carpeting to expose more of the woofer, and once you can see the plug, go ahead and disconnect it. Remove the 4 T20 screws securing the woofer to its bracket. Remove the factory woofer. And drop in an Alpha 1 S90. Reuse the factory screws to secure it. Plug it in and make sure the carpeting is tucked back into place before replacing the grille. Drop the grille on and replace the 4 screws. Don't use too much torque so you don't strip the plastic. Do the same on the driver's side. Once that side is done, drop your seats back down, reconnect your battery, and adjust your seats as needed to replace the bolts. Start with the ones up front, but leave them a little loose so you can line up the rears. Tighten the rear bolts all the way, and do a final tighten on the fronts. Move the seats all the way forward for the next step. We do suggest making sure the battery is disconnected before moving on to the next step, as one of the panels in the rear has an airbag in it. While we won't be disconnecting it, if you accidentally do while the battery is connected, you could get a warning light. Let's continue our way back and move to the rear side panels. A lot to take off, but thankfully designed well and easy to do. Start by popping off this cover and removing the T50 bolt to free the seatbelt. Once free, pop it off of this plate. Next, remove this lower trim by pulling from the front and pulling it away at the rear. Remove any fasteners that stay behind and place them back into the trim later for reassembly. Now we need to remove the rear seat, which is accomplished just by pulling up from the front. Push the seatbelt connectors through and remove the seat. The seat bolster is next, so start by removing the 5mm hex bolt next to the seatbelt bolt. While here, use a trim tool to pop free these retainers so you can slide the panel aside later. Lower the rear seat and use a trim tool to pop off this cover. Remove the 5mm hex bolt behind it. Slide the seatbelt out of the way and pull the bolster off. If this tab stays behind, just pinch in the middle to free it and snap it back into the bolster. Carefully set this aside as there is an airbag in it. To remove this C-pillar trim, pop off this cover plate and remove the 8mm bolt behind it. There are 2 clips where Jarrett is pointing, so pull accordingly to pop it free and slide it out. Now we can finally remove the side panel. Similar to the front doors, start from the bottom and keep pulling. It's a bit easier, but be careful when you get around the seatbelt as there are 2 metal retainers holding that part of the trim down that may fall off. Slide the belt through. Remove the harness retainers. Disconnect the speaker, and remove the panel. On the panel, disconnect the tweeter from the mid, and remove the 3 T20 screws holding the mid. Remove the mid. The tweeter is glued in with some soft glue, so carefully pick it away with a pick tool. It's not the most elegant task, but BMW has used hard, brittle plastic-like glue before, so this is a treat. Once you do get the glue out, push back the tabs with a pick tool while pulling on the leads of the tweeter. Do your best to remove the rest of the glue once you get the tweeter out. After that, snap in an Alpha 1 signature tweeter. Next, drop in an S45 mid and reinstall the factory screws. Finally, the crossover. Start by sticking on one of the soft adhesive pads. Peel off the other side and stick it right here. Loom the cables together with some cable ties. Plug mid out into the mid, and TW out into the tweeter connector. In will be plugged in back at the car. Tidy up all the slack, and put the insulation back in place. Back at the car, plug the feed from the amp into in on the crossover, and resecure the retainers. Slide the seatbelt through and snap the panel back in place. Make sure the weather stripping is over it. Snap the rear bolster in. Reinstall the 8mm bolt and cover plate back up top. Put the rear seat back and reinstall the lower 8mm bolt. Snap the retainers back in place. Lower the seat one more time and slide the C-pillar trim into place and snap it down. Make note of the tab in the back. Reinstall the 8mm bolt and cover. For the side panel, slide it under the trim in the back from the rear first. Then snap it back down into place. Snap the seatbelt back into the bottom plate. Put it back in place. Reinstall the bolt. And finish it off with the cover. Finally, bring the rear seat back in and feed the seatbelt connectors through the openings. Attaching the belts will help stop them from sliding back down. Push the seat down and you're good. Finally, the rear shelf. Awkward to get to, but easy overall. You will get to see Jarrett steam up the glass and some rather unflattering angles of his head, as well as me looming in the background on the GoPro clips. Either way, start with the trim tool to remove the grille. There are tabs at the rear, so don't pry from there. Remove the 3 T20 screws holding the mid down, and the 2 holding the tweeter down. Pull them out and disconnect them. Place the Alpha 1 signature oval tweeter in place. Jarrett hand-threaded the screws in for now. Grab a crossover and prep the cables to go all to one side like you did for all the other ones. Once ready, slide it under here. Feed the cables under the shelf here, and plug the tweeter into TW out, and the feed from the amp into in.
Tuck everything out of the way, and plug mid out into an S40 mid. Reinstall all of the screws, slide the grill back in from the rear first, and the installation of the Alpha 1 amp and Signature Edition speakers in your G82 is complete.
And that is how you install the Alpha 1 Signature Edition speakers and our amp in a BMW G82 M4. Now, this badass car has a badass sound system to go with it. Want this for your G82 or any compatible BMW? Head on over to our site and enter your VIN to get the right kit for your ride. Have any more questions about the speakers or amp? You could reach out to our sales team via chat on our site or by calling. Already have the speakers and amp and have any more questions about the install or anything like that? You could reach out to our support team with your order number and they will be eager to assist. But as always, for more tips and tricks, product reviews, and so much more for BMWs, Minis, Supras, and Teslas, make sure you subscribe and don't forget to ring that bell. Want to know what's happening first? Head on over to our site and sign up for our newsletter. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok as well. Thanks for watching.